All right, today we are doing lesson 2.2.3 in our book, where we're talking about using positive and negative tiles to represent forward and backward movement. We had it in our one of our previous assignments where we had a bunch of pluses and a bunch of minuses talking about what value they are. So today we're going to use those two model expressions and figure out values. And one thing we need to think about is can we show in more than one way? What do we do if the numbers are very large? We don't want to be drawing tons of positive and negatives and having to count them. So this is day 2 regarding integers. And this is lesson 2.2.3. And so we're starting off with some collection of tiles. So first of all, we have, let's say that you have a collection of tiles that looks like this. Okay, so these are the tiles in your collection. And then you're working with a partner who has a collection of tiles, and you're trying to figure out who has more in their pile. Okay, so this is what your partners looks like. Okay. So looking at the tiles, we can start focusing on the pluses and the minuses. And you see that your pile, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positives, which we know now represents 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4 negative tiles, which we know represents negative 4. So we have 7 plus negative 4. And to get the value of this, there's a couple things we can do. First, we know that 7 plus negative 4, we can think of it in other ways using a number line and all that. But if we have the tiles here, we know what happens when you have a positive and a negative together. This is called a zero pair. So if we look around, how many zero pairs do we have? And let's just kind of take those and remove them. How many zero pairs do we have? Okay, so in total, we have 4 zero pairs, leaving us with a value of 3. Okay, so our pile has a value of 3. Let's look at our partners. How many zero pairs do we have? And first, what's the expression? And you should have 3 plus negative 7. And then let's count our zero pairs, because I'm not sure, we're not too comfortable with our negatives and positives yet. We just learned integers, and we're fairly new. So let's go ahead and do our zero pairs so we can see it. All right, so that leaves us with 4 negatives. We have 3 zero pairs. That gives us negative 4. So which one is larger? If I have 3 and I have negative 4, and we know that 3 is greater than negative 4. Okay, so I have a greater value. So on the next concept, so let's just actually let's stay on this concept and go looking at another example. Okay, this would be example A. We have negative 8 plus 2. So we're going from having the expression to now writing it using the tiles and using that to see what we have. So if you're looking at this and you're new to integers, you're not sure, is it 10, negative 10, 6, negative 6, what's the value? So if we go slowly, we can think, well, I have 8 negatives because that's a negative 8. So let me just put that down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 negatives. And I'm going to add 2 to it, and those are positives. So I can add 2 more positives to this collection. But when I add those, I'm going to add them here. I have a positive here and a positive there. Why did I add them there? I added them there because now they are set up for me to extract those 0 pairs. That's a 0 and that's a 0. So now all I have to do in order to get my answer is look what I have left. So negative 8 plus 2 equals negative 6. All right, so let's try a different one. This is question B. We have negative 5 plus negative 3. And notice, even though we're using positives and negatives, we're adding everything. Everything's being added. So keep that in mind. That's what we're diagramming. All right. So we start with 5 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm adding 3 negatives to it. Does it help if I put the negatives underneath? Not really. It's not going to hurt it either, but I'd rather add the 3 negatives to show that we're still adding the same thing. 5 negatives plus 3 negatives. And what that gets me is my answer. There are no 0 pairs. The answer is negative 8. Negative 5 plus negative 3. All right, so moving on to problem C. So now we have 2 plus negative 4. Now, at this point, you might already have, okay, I can do this in my head. I have the answer. 2 plus negative 4, I know. But we're getting the diagramming down, and let's just make sure that we're doing it, because when problems do get difficult, we'll at least have the procedure that will help us out. Okay, so we're starting with 2. So here's 1, 2. And I'm adding 4 negatives to it. So I'm going to add them down below. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this gives me 2 0 pairs, leaving me with an answer of negative 2. Okay, so make the connection between the expressions and the diagrams. This is what we will be doing. You will be tested on this. Just make sure you do it the way that we're taught. Okay, problem D. We have negative 4 plus 8 plus negative 2. Okay. Now looking at that, some of us might have the answer down, but let's diagram it. Okay, so I'm starting with 4 negatives. Then I'm adding 8 positives to them. Yes, I'm going down below so I can pair up my 0 pairs. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I have 4 negatives plus 8 positives, and I'm going to add 2 more negatives to it. And I will be putting those right here above those 2 positives. And now I have my 0 pairs. It's giving me 6 0 pairs, leaving me with an answer of 2. Which we might have gotten at the beginning of this problem, but still. I'm not teaching you how to add, I'm teaching you how to diagram integers. Okay, so let's go to problem E. We have negative 6 plus 6. Okay, now if you remember the previous lesson, we know that these two numbers are opposites, right? So those will give us 3 negatives and 3 positives. So we have nothing but 0 pairs. So now we can see, well, why do opposites add up to 0? And you can see we have nothing but 0 pairs when we add them. So this is why. And question number F. We have negative 3 plus 5 plus 3. Okay, so this gives you 3 negatives, starting with. We're adding 5 positives to it. And then we're adding 3 positives more. And now we can add up our 0 pairs, giving us 5. And this might set an answer to our question yesterday when we have, in an expression, we have two opposites. Okay, we have a pair of opposites, so those kind of cancel each other out, give us 5. That's kind of like an algorithm or a rule to live by, but we can see why those 3 positives and 3 negatives do zero out, giving us 5. All right, so now these problems will kind of lead us to, okay, these are the ones that we did, will kind of lead us to some different kind of problems that have a little bit more difficulty. So if you think about this problem, negative 200 plus 14. Now, first of all, how would we be able to add those? Okay, this is problem number 59. We have negative 240, negative 200 plus 14. Now, first of all, is my answer going to be positive or is my answer going to be negative? All right, now if you were to picture them, you could see, okay, I'm going to have 200 negatives, so big, huge pile of negatives, and I'm adding 14 positives to that pile. So how many zero pairs am I going to have? I'm going to have 14 zero pairs. So in essence, we are just basically taking 200 and we're subtracting 14 from it, and that's how many negatives we're going to have left over once we take out those zero pairs. Okay, so this will give us a value of 186, and the answer is going to be negative because we have more negatives than positives. So it's always a good thing that before you get an answer to a problem like this, you get it stuck into your head, well, my answer is going to be negative. So you need to make sure at the very end that your answer is negative, and you're using the absolute values this way. 200 negatives, 400 positives. I'm going to go 200 this way, 400 that way, so you're taking away from that distance of 200. So let's look at a different problem. So let's do the same thing with this one. You have negative 100 plus 50. And negative 100 plus 50, that one is kind of easy. We have 100 negatives, and we're adding 50 positives to it, so that would give us negative 50. Okay, so where would it help us with this one here? So we have negative 30 and 5/8. This is B on that one. Negative 30 and 5/8 plus negative 60 and 1/4. Okay, so as we're thinking about this problem, earlier we did with the arrows, and so yeah, you would be going 30 and 5/8 in that direction, and then you would be going 60 and 1/4 in that direction as well. Okay, but let's think about tiles. Well, I've got 30 negative tiles and 5/8 negative tiles, and then 60 negative tiles and 1/4 negative tiles. So altogether, I have 90 negative tiles so far with the whole numbers, and then 5/8 and 1/4, those are the fraction parts of those. Now, I know that I can only split those up because they all have the same sign. So if I change this to negative 60 and 2/8, I can now add or subtract them. So that would give me negative 90 and 7/8. Because everything is negative, and I'm just adding those negatives to negatives to get a larger negative.